From a distance, an 18th-century warship looked like power, tall sails, iron cannons, and a flag cutting through the wind. But step aboard, and that symbol of empire becomes something darker. A floating prison made of wood, salt, sickness, and command. The first thing you would notice is not the ocean. It is the smell. Wet wool, sweat, smoke, old food, bilge water, and hundreds of men trapped inside the same breathing wooden body. There is no private room waiting for you. No bed. No silence. You sleep in a swinging hammock, inches from another man, while the ship groans through the night. Your day begins before comfort has a chance to exist. Ropes must be hauled, sails must be handled, decks must be scrubbed, and every order must be obeyed before your body can complain. Above you, the rigging rises like a wooden tower. One wrong grip, one wet rope, one sudden gust, and the deck below becomes the last thing you ever see. Food is not a meal here. It is a test. Salted meat, dried peas, stale cheese, and hardtack, so hard sailors often had to soften it before eating. After weeks at sea, even the bread can become suspicious. Hardtack was built to last, but moisture, storage, and insects could turn survival food into something you had to force yourself to swallow. Fresh fruit disappears early. Fresh water turns stale. And long before you understand what is happening, your body begins to suffer from what the voyage no longer gives it. Then comes scurvy. At first, it is weakness, then pain, then wounds that refuse to heal. In the 18th century, this disease killed more sailors than combat. Disease does not need drama to be terrifying. It spreads quietly through hammocks, coughs, dirty air, shared space, and the simple fact that no one can step away from the ship. And if sickness does not break you, discipline might. A warship runs on hierarchy. Orders move fast, and hesitation can become punishment. This is survival without freedom. The ship decides when you eat, when you sleep, when you work, when you climb, and when you're allowed to be afraid. Above deck, the sea looks infinite. Below deck, the ceiling feels inches from your face. The same ship gives you endless horizon and total confinement. Then the weather changes. The deck tilts. The ropes tighten. The sails snap. And the entire wooden world begins to move like it wants to throw you into the sea. In a storm, you climb wet ropes in darkness with numb fingers. No harness. No soft landing. No second chance if the wind takes you. Below, men are thrown against beams. Barrels shift. Hammocks swing. Water leaks through seams. Even sleep becomes another way the ship reminds you it is stronger. But the ocean is not the only enemy. Inside the gun deck, the cannons wait. Iron mouths lined in darkness, ready to turn the ship into thunder. A cannon crew has to move as one body. Load, aim, fire, reset. One mistake, and the weapon made to protect the ship can destroy the men beside it. Battle is not clean. It is smoke, heat, shouting, splintered wood, and the terrible knowledge that the walls around you are also fuel. Fire is always one spark away. Powder must stay dry. Lanterns must be controlled. A wooden warship carries its own destruction inside its belly. Then comes the surgeon, not with comfort, not with modern medicine, with tools, speed, and the brutal hope that infection will not win. There are no antibiotics here, no clean operating room, no quiet recovery bed, just a cramped space below deck, a moving floor, and a body trying to survive the century it was born into. The ship is also a machine. Pumps, sails, ropes, barrels, guns, powder, ballast. Every system has to work because the ocean only needs one failure. Even calm weather is not peace. Men patch leaks, scrape rot, move supplies, pump water, clean decks, and prepare for disasters that have not happened yet. A warship is a city compressed into a hull, kitchen, hospital, prison, factory, fortress, and graveyard possibility, all stacked above the dark water line. Every inch matters. Barrels of water, salted meat, powder, rope, canvas, spare wood. Wasted space is not inconvenience at sea. It is danger. The longer the voyage lasts, the more your body becomes part of the inventory. Another mouth to feed, another pair of hands to use, another risk to manage. And still, the ship keeps moving. Empires do not pause for fever, hunger, fear, or grief. The sails fill, and the men obey. Some men volunteered. Some were desperate. Some were trapped by poverty, duty, or circumstance. But once aboard, the ocean closed behind them. There is no emergency exit, no rescue from above, no fresh market beyond the next wave. If the ship becomes your world, then the sea becomes its wall. The cold at sea is different. It enters clothing, bedding, breath, and bone. What can stay wet for days, and your skin never truly feels dry. A modern person might fear the cannon, but a sailor feared something slower, the body wearing down before the voyage was finished. Fatigue changes the ship. The mast looks higher. The ropes feel heavier. Orders blur, and the next task arrives before the last one has left your muscles. For the crew, fear does not always arrive as panic. Sometimes it arrives as silence, a strange sail on the horizon, a dark cloud line, or land where no one expected land. Navigation is a fight against clouds, currents, instruments, memory, and mathematics. One small error can place the ship hundreds of miles from safety. And if land appears, it is not always salvation. A reef, a rocky coast, a hostile harbor. The end of empty water can become another beginning of danger. Even a harbor does not promise freedom. It brings supplies, repairs, orders, disease, and the knowledge that the ship may soon swallow you again. Survival at sea is not one dramatic moment. It is repetition without mercy. Rope, ration, storm, sickness, order, sleep, and then the same thing again. Every day asks the same question in a different form. What will break first? The mast, the hull, the ration barrels, the crew's loyalty, or your own mind? Isolation becomes its own weather. Invisible, constant, and impossible to outrun. There are no familiar streets here. No messages from home. No certainty that anyone will return. For a modern mind, the hardest part might not be hunger. It might be helplessness. You cannot control the sea. You cannot question the command. You cannot leave. And yet these men crossed oceans, fought wars, carried trade, guarded empires, and kept wooden worlds alive through skill, discipline, and suffering. Their knowledge was physical: knots, stars, wind, weight, timing, and fear. A warship survived because hundreds of small actions happened before disaster could grow. The miracle is not that these ships look majestic. The miracle is that they kept functioning through storms, sickness, battle, hunger, and human exhaustion. But survival always has a cost. By the end of a voyage, a sailor does not simply arrive. He emerges changed by salt, cold, fear, discipline, and water without end. Naval glory is painted in flags, victories, and polished history. Naval reality lives in lungs, stomachs, hands, backs, and bones. So could you survive an 18th-century warship? Could you eat the food, breathe the air, obey the orders, climb into storms, and sleep inside a moving cage? Could you stay sane when the same horizon followed you for months? Could you endure sickness before medicine, discipline before rights, and danger before rescue? The answer depends on more than strength. It depends on luck, obedience, endurance, and what fear does to you when there is nowhere else to go. From the outside, an 18th-century warship was a symbol of power. From the inside, it was a test of how long a human being could remain human at sea. Before the ship could fight an enemy, it had to fight decay. Salt entered every seam. Moisture lived in the wood. Rot was not an accident. It was always waiting. A leak did not need to be dramatic to become deadly. Drop by drop, the ocean tested the patience of every plank. The pumps became a rhythm of survival. Men pushed, pulled, sweated, and prayed that the water below them stayed below them. Even the cleanest part of the ship was never truly clean. Salt, smoke, sweat, rats, and damp would turn hygiene into a losing negotiation. The crew learned to live beside discomfort, because discomfort was not an emergency here. It was the normal condition of being alive. Then came the watch system. Hours broken into duty, sleep, labor, and interruption. The ship did not care if your body was ready. A bell could pull you from a dream, a storm, a fever, or the first real sleep you had found in days. Sleep deprivation changed everything. Ropes seemed harder to untie. Orders became harder to hear. Fear became easier to believe. And fear had many shapes. A black cloud, a strange sail, a cracked mast, a fevered man coughing in the next hammock. The officers feared disorder as much as danger. A crew that stopped obeying could become more dangerous than the sea itself. That is why discipline was not just cruelty. It was also the brutal logic of keeping a wooden world from collapsing. Still, understanding the system did not make it easier to survive inside it. Pain feels different when you're not allowed to stop. Punishment did not have to be shown to be understood. Every man on board knew what waited for defiance. For a modern viewer, that may be the hardest part to imagine. Not the food, not the storm, but the total absence of choice. You could survive hunger for a while. You could survive cold for a while. But could you survive being owned by the schedule of a ship? The galley brought warmth, but not comfort. Smoke hung low, pots rattled, and meals were more about endurance than pleasure. Salted meat kept men alive, but it also reminded them how far they were from anything fresh, green, or growing. Rum, beer, or watered supplies could dull the misery, but nothing erased the truth. The body was being asked to run on shortage. When illness arrived, it did not ask who was useful. A skilled hand, a strong back, a brave climber, all could weaken the same way. And a sick man was not only a human tragedy. He was also a missing worker in a machine that needed every hand. The ship never stopped needing work. If one man fell, another had to carry more rope, more weight, more fear. This is why survival at sea was collective. Your weakness could endanger others. Their failure could become yours. The ship turned strangers into a single organism, not through friendship, but through necessity. But necessity does not erase loneliness. You could be surrounded by hundreds of men and still feel completely alone. The mind begins to measure distance differently, not in miles, but in meals left, dry clothes missing, and nights without real sleep. Then one morning, the weather clears. The sea calms. And somehow, the silence feels more frightening than the storm. Because calm gives you time to notice what the storm left behind. Torn canvas, tired men, damaged wood, and the fear of what comes next. Repair was not optional. A damaged ship in the middle of the ocean was not wounded. It was negotiating with death. Every repair carried a question. Will this hold when the next wave hits? And still, beyond the rail, the horizon remains empty. No land, no mercy, no proof that the suffering is almost over. When land finally appears, hope arrives with suspicion. A coastline can mean fresh water or reefs, enemy guns, disease, and another order to sail. A port smells different from the ship. Earth, smoke, animals, bread, mud, proof that another world still exists. But stepping near land does not mean escaping the ship. Supplies must be loaded. Orders must be carried. Repairs must be finished before comfort can begin. The ship feeds on provisions the way the crew feeds on rations. Water, wood, powder, canvas, rope, everything disappears into its hunger. And once the hold is full, the illusion of safety returns. But every sailor knows supplies are only time stored in barrels. Then the anchor rises. The harbor fades. The coast becomes a line, then a stain, then nothing. The hardest part is realizing the cycle has begun again. The same sea, the same hunger, the same wood above and below you. Survival becomes less about winning and more about lasting. Another watch, another ration, another night, another order. A heroic painting might show the ship under full sail, but it rarely shows the man below deck wondering if his strength will last until morning. This is the hidden truth of naval power. Every cannon, every sail, every victory depended on bodies pushed beyond comfort. The warship was not just a weapon. It was a test chamber for hunger, cold, obedience, disease, fear, and endurance. To survive it, you would need more than courage. You would need a body trained by hardship and a mind willing to surrender control. You would need to eat what disgusted you, sleep where you could, work through pain, and obey when every instinct wanted to refuse. And even then, survival might not belong to the strongest. It might belong to the one who does not panic when a ship begins to fail. Because panic wastes seconds. And at sea, seconds can decide whether a loose sail is controlled, a leak is sealed, or a man is lost. This is why the question is not only whether you could survive the storm. It is whether you could survive the ship on the calm days too. Could you survive the silence after danger? The boredom before fear? The routine that slowly turns a person into part of the machinery? By the end, the warship has taken something from every man aboard: strength, sleep, innocence, certainty, or the person he was before sailing. So when history remembers these ships as symbols of empire, remember what empire sounded like below deck: coughing, creaking wood, chains of command, and men trying to last one more day. From the outside, an 18th century warship was power under sail. From the inside, it was a question carved into every plank: how much can a human being endure before the sea changes him forever?